It is futile to keep a girl like you in this house. My father's scream rang out across the quiet suburban lawn as he threw my last suitcase onto the concrete. Standing safely behind him in the doorway was my sister, Taylor. She didn't look sad that I was being evicted. She smiled. She had just landed a new corporate job, and in their eyes, she was finally the winner. Tears felt like a structural weakness I couldn't afford. Begging was beneath the foundation I had built. I simply stood there and watched them slam the heavy oak door in my face. They thought I was homeless. They had no idea that the company Taylor was so proud to join was actually mine. They didn't know I was the secret CEO. And they certainly didn't know that by tomorrow morning, the balance of power would shift forever. Drop a comment and let me know where you're listening from and what time it is for you right now. I'd love to know who's part of our community. I did not look back at the house. I did not watch the windows to see if they were watching me. I simply picked up my suitcase, threw it into the trunk of my 10-year-old sedan, and drove away. My hands were steady on the wheel. There was no shaking, no hyperventilating, no desperate need to pull over and sob. That reaction belonged to a daughter who had lost her home. I hadn't lost anything. I was simply returning to my real life. I drove 30 minutes into the city, past the smog and the noise, until I reached the underground entrance of the Meridian. The most exclusive high-rise in the district. I rolled down my window, scanned my keycard, and the heavy steel gates retracted. I parked my beat-up sedan next to a row of luxury vehicles that belonged to tech moguls and diplomats. I didn't fit in here, at least not to the naked eye, but the building knew who I was. I stepped into the private elevator and pressed the button for the penthouse. When the doors slid open, silence greeted me, not the heavy, suffocating silence of my parents' house, where every creak of the floorboard was an invitation for criticism. This was the silence of ownership. Floor-to-ceiling windows looked out over the skyline I helped design. This was the sanctuary I had built over the last 4 years, the headquarters of a secret life my family was too self-absorbed to notice. They thought I was a daydreamer, a girl who spent too much time doodling in sketchbooks and refusing to get a real job. They didn't know those doodles were architectural blueprints that had won contracts worth $14 million. They didn't know I was the founder of Verde Horizon. They saw what they wanted to see, a failure. I walked to my desk, a slab of black marble that cost more than my father's car, and opened my laptop. It was time to audit the books. For years, I had been the invisible engine keeping my parents' chaotic financial life afloat. I logged into my private banking portal and pulled up the recurring transfers, mortgage payments disguised as government housing subsidies, utility bills paid automatically, Taylor's credit card debt, which I had cleared monthly under the guise of administrative loan forgiveness. I stared at the numbers. $3,000 a month for the house, $600 for utilities, another $1,000 for Taylor's lifestyle. People talk about financial abuse like it is always forced, but sometimes it is a survival tactic. I realized a long time ago that my family was like a hydra. If they were hungry, they attacked. If they were stressed about money, they turned on me. So, I paid them. I didn't pay them out of love, and I certainly didn't do it out of loyalty. I paid them to buy my own peace. It was a survival tax. As long as their bills were paid, they were too comfortable to look closely at what I was doing. I had forged these invisible chains to keep the beast sedated while I built my empire in the shadows. But tonight, the beast had bitten the hand that fed it. They had thrown me out, thinking I was a leech, unaware that I was the host. Guilt is a luxury for people who can afford mistakes. I couldn't. I selected the mortgage transfer. I selected the utility auto-pay. I selected the credit card relief fund. I moved the cursor to the Cancel All Recurring Payments button. I didn't hesitate. I clicked. The screen refreshed. Status: canceled. The safety net was gone. They were free-falling now, and they wouldn't even realize they had hit the ground until the first bill arrived in 30 days. I closed the laptop, poured myself a glass of water, and watched the city lights flicker below. The chains were gone. I was finally free. I leaned back in my ergonomic chair, the leather cool against my skin, and let the silence of the penthouse wash over me. It was strange. 24 hours ago, I was sleeping on a lumpy mattress in my childhood bedroom, listening to my father scream about the electric bill. Now, I was watching the sunrise reflect off the glass skyscrapers of the city I had helped shape. My mind drifted back to the moment it all started. Not the eviction, but the slow, corrosive realization that my family didn't just misunderstand me, they needed me to be small. We grow up thinking our parents want us to succeed. It is the great lie of childhood. The truth is, some parents only want you to succeed in a way that doesn't threaten them. Taylor was safe. Taylor was predictable. She got a degree in human resources because my mother said it was sensible. She got a job at a mid-level corporation because my father said it was stable. She was the perfect mirror for their own mediocrity. When they looked at her, they saw validation. They saw proof that their small, fearful worldview was correct. But when they looked at me, they saw a threat. I remember showing them my first architectural sketches when I was 16. I had designed a sustainable community center, complete with solar integration and rainwater harvesting. I was so proud, I laid the blueprints on the kitchen table, my heart pounding. My father barely looked up from his newspaper. More doodles, Savannah? You can't pay a mortgage with imaginary buildings. My mother laughed, that thin, brittle sound she made whenever she was uncomfortable. Oh, let her dream, Robert. It keeps her quiet. They didn't see the genius. They didn't see the future. They saw a challenge to their own stagnation. Psychologists call it cognitive dissonance. If they admitted that my doodles were actually brilliant, they would have to admit that they had wasted their lives being afraid. They would have to admit that I, the daughter they ignored, had surpassed them before I even graduated high school. It was easier to label me a failure. It protected their ego. It kept their world small and manageable. So I let them. I stopped showing them my work. I stopped talking about my accepted proposals. I stopped mentioning the awards. I let them believe I was drifting, aimless and unemployed, while I built Verde Horizon from a laptop in my bedroom. Verde Horizon. The name meant green horizon, a promise of a better future. It started as a freelance consulting gig and exploded into a multi-million-dollar firm specializing in eco-friendly corporate campuses. I had clients in Tokyo, Berlin, and San Francisco. I had been featured in Architectural Digest under a pseudonym, and just last month, we had finalized the acquisition of the very office building where Taylor was starting her new job. The irony was almost suffocating. Taylor was going to walk into my building, sit at a desk paid for by my company, and brag about her salary to parents whose bills were paid by my secret accounts. She thought she had won. She thought she was the queen of the castle. She didn't know the castle belonged to the sister she had just kicked to the curb. I stood up and walked to the window. The sun was fully up now, bathing the city in golden light. Today was Taylor's first day. She would be walking into the lobby in less than an hour, expecting admiration, expecting to be the main character. I checked my watch. 7:30 a.m. It was time to go to work. I went to my closet and bypassed the hoodies and jeans I wore around them. I pulled out a tailored suit, Italian wool, charcoal gray. I put on my heels, the ones that clicked with authority on marble floors. I looked in the mirror. The girl who had been thrown out last night was gone. In her place stood the CEO. I grabbed my briefcase. The game was about to change, and this time, I was the one making the rules. I arrived at the Verde Horizon headquarters at 8:15. The lobby was a cavern of glass and steel, designed to impress. A 2-story living wall of greenery dominated the reception area, a signature of my eco-centric philosophy. I usually use the private elevator from the garage, but today, I walked in through the front doors. I needed to be seen. Taylor was already there. She was standing near the reception desk, looking every bit the corporate climber. She wore a beige suit that looked expensive but fit poorly, likely bought with the emergency fund transfer I had sent my mother last week. She was holding a coffee cup like it was a scepter, chatting loudly to the receptionist, clearly trying to establish dominance early. When the glass doors slid open and I walked in, her head snapped toward me. Her eyes widened, then narrowed into slits of pure disdain. She said something to the receptionist, probably an apology for the riffraff, and marched toward me, her heels clacking aggressively on the polished floor. "Are you serious?" she hissed, stopping just inches from my face. "You actually followed me here?" I looked at her, really looked at her. I saw the insecurity beneath the makeup, the desperate need to be superior. "Hello, Taylor. Don't hello me," she snapped, lowering her voice but increasing the venom. "This is a place of business, Savannah. Real business. Not whatever fantasy land you live in. Why are you here? Did Mom tell you where I work? Are you here to beg for money? Because let me tell you right now, I am not giving you a dime." She looked around the lobby, checking to see if anyone important was watching. "Look at you," she sneered, eyeing my suit. "Where did you even steal that? It doesn't matter. You need to leave. Now. Before I call security and have you dragged out. It would be embarrassing for you, but honestly, I'd kind of enjoy it." She stepped closer, invading my personal space. Confident in her new title. "I'm the executive HR coordinator here, Savannah. That means I decide who gets in and who doesn't. And someone like you? You don't belong in a building like this. You belong on the street where we left you." She smirked, that same cruel smile from the night before. "Go find a shelter, or a bridge. I don't care. Just get out of my lobby." She crossed her arms, waiting for me to crumble. She expected the sister who flinched. She expected the sister who apologized for existing. She expected the scapegoat. Her words were noise, not signal. I adjusted my briefcase and looked past her, toward the security turnstiles. "Are you done?" I asked, my voice calm, almost bored. Taylor blinked, thrown off by my lack of reaction. Excuse me? I asked if you were done," I repeated. "Because you're right about one thing, Taylor. This is a place of business. And I have work to do." I stepped around her. She reached out to grab my arm, her face twisting in shock and rage. "Hey, I am talking to you. You can't just—" I didn't stop. I walked straight toward the security gates. Taylor scrambled after me, signaling frantically to the security guard. "Stop her! She's trespassing! She's—" Her voice cut off as I reached the turnstile. I didn't reach for a visitor pass. I didn't ask for permission. I simply raised my right hand and pressed my thumb against the biometric scanner. The light didn't turn red. It didn't buzz a warning. It flashed a bright, welcoming green. A computerized voice, smooth and clear, echoed through the silent lobby. Identity confirmed. "Welcome, CEO Bennett." The silence that followed was absolute. The robotic greeting hung in the air like a guillotine blade that had just dropped. "Welcome, CEO Bennett." I walked through the open turnstile, the steel barrier retracting smoothly for me. Behind me, Taylor slammed into the locked gate. She gripped the metal bars, her knuckles white, looking like a prisoner on the wrong side of freedom. The security guard, who had been halfway out of his chair to intercept me, froze. He looked at the screen on his console, saw my clearance level, and immediately snapped to attention. "Good morning, Miss Bennett. My apologies. I didn't recognize you from the usual entrance." "It's fine, David," I said, not breaking stride. "Please let the new hire through. She's with me." David buzzed the gate. Taylor stumbled through, nearly tripping over her own heels. She ran up to me, grabbing my arm again, her voice a frantic whisper shout. "What did you do? Did you hack the system? Savannah, you are going to go to jail. You can't just—" "Miss Bennett?" The receptionist, a sharp woman named Elena who had been with me since the garage days, stood up from her desk. She held a tablet against her chest. "The executive team is waiting in boardroom A. They're reviewing the Tokyo proposal. Shall I send in coffee?" "Thank you, Elena. Black coffee for me." And I glanced at Taylor, who was staring at Elena with her mouth agape. "A water for the junior coordinator. She looks dehydrated." "Right away, ma'am." I turned and walked toward the elevators. Taylor followed, dazed, like a dog that had been kicked but didn't know where else to go. We stepped into the executive lift. The doors slid shut, sealing us in a box of polished chrome and silence. "This is a prank," Taylor whispered, her confidence fracturing. It has to be. You draw in a sketchbook. You live in our old room. Mom gives you allowance for gas. I didn't look at her. I checked my watch. You're late for your first meeting, Taylor. I am not late. I am early, and you are insane. Her voice rose to a screech. I am going to tell the hiring manager that my crazy sister stalked me here and hacked the security. The elevator chimed. The doors opened directly into the executive suite. The hallway was lined with awards. Sustainable Design of the Year. Global Innovator Award. Top 30 under 30. And on every plaque, etched in gold, Savannah Bennett, founder and CEO. Taylor stopped walking. She read the first plaque, then the second. Her face drained of color, leaving her makeup looking like a mask on a corpse. Read them later, I said cold. We have business. I pushed open the double glass doors of the boardroom. The conversation inside stopped instantly. 6 of the most powerful architects and strategists in the city stood up from their chairs. These were men and women who intimidated billionaires, people who didn't stand for anyone. They stood for me. Good morning, everyone, I said, walking to the head of the long mahogany table. Morning, Savannah, my CFO said, nodding respectfully. We were just discussing the projections. I took the seat at the head of the table, the seat of power. I placed my briefcase on the table and clasped my hands. Then, I looked at the empty chair at the far end of the room, the one reserved for trainees and note-takers, the kids' table of the corporate world. Taylor, I said, my voice projecting clearly across the room. She was standing in the doorway, trembling. Sit down, I commanded. She looked at me. She looked at the executives staring at her. The arrogance was gone, replaced by a terrifying, dawning comprehension. She walked slowly to the end of the table and sank into the chair. She was small. I was giants. Now, I said, opening my file, let's review the new hire's qualifications. The air in the boardroom was so thin it felt like breathing glass. Taylor sat at the far end of the table, her hands gripping the armrests so tight her knuckles were white. The executives, sensing the tension, glanced between us but remained silent. They knew better than to interrupt. I tapped my tablet, and the main screen on the wall flickered to life. It displayed a PDF document, blown up to 10 feet tall. This, I said, pointing a laser at the screen, is the resume submitted by Taylor Bennett for the position of Executive HR Coordinator. Taylor flinched. Savannah, please. We can talk about this later. At home. Mom is going to be so quiet, I said. It wasn't a shout. It was a command. I zoomed in on the education section. According to this document, you graduated cum laude from State University with a 3.8 GPA. She swallowed hard. I rounded up. Everyone does it. You had a 2.4, I corrected. I saw your transcripts. Mom paid to have them sealed, but public records are tricky things when you're applying for a corporate job. I scrolled down. Here. You list an internship at Global Tech Solutions last summer. A prestigious placement. I turned to my CFO. Marcus, did we verify this? Marcus cleared his throat. We called Global Tech. They have no record of a Taylor Bennett. The reference number listed goes to a burner phone. Taylor's face was now a mask of pure panic. I freelanced. And finally, I said, scrolling to the skills section. Certified in conflict resolution and strategic mediation. I raised an eyebrow. You threw a tantrum in my lobby 10 minutes ago because you thought I was poor. Is that your idea of conflict resolution? The room was dead silent. My executives were staring at Taylor with a mixture of pity and disgust. This wasn't just a sisterly spat anymore. This was exposure. I knew, I said softly. I knew the moment your application crossed the desk. I flagged it. I told HR to push it through. Taylor looked up, betrayal warring with fear in her eyes. You let me get the job? I wanted it on record. I said. I wanted a paper trail. If I had just told Mom and Dad you were lying, they would have called me jealous. They would have said I was trying to sabotage you. But this, I gestured to the screen. This is legal documentation of fraud. You lied on a federal employment form. You falsified credentials to a multinational corporation. I closed the file. The screen went black. This isn't a family dispute, Taylor. This is corporate malfeasance. And unlike Mom and Dad, I don't cover for liabilities. Taylor stood up, her chair scraping loudly against the floor. You set me up. You planned this. You're just jealous because I'm the favorite. I'm calling Dad. Go ahead, I said, leaning back in my chair. Call him. Put him on speaker. Let's tell him together that his golden child is a fraud. She fumbled for her phone, her hands shaking so badly she almost dropped it. She dialed. The ringing sound amplified in the silent room. Taylor? My father's voice boomed from the tiny speaker. How was the first day? Sweetheart? Did you show them who's boss? Dad, Taylor sobbed. Savannah is here. She's the CEO. She's trying to fire me. What? My father's voice dropped an octave. Put her on. Now. Taylor held the phone out like a weapon. He wants to talk to you. I didn't take the phone. I just leaned forward. Hello, Robert. Savannah? He sounded confused, then angry. What the hell are you doing there? Get out of your sister's office before I call the police. I am the police today, Dad, I said. And Taylor doesn't have an office. She has a cardboard box waiting for her at security. You listen to me, he started to shout. No, I interrupted. You listen. Taylor lied on her resume. She committed fraud. She is fired. Effective immediately. You can't do that. We are family. We were family, I corrected. Until last night. Now, we're just a bad investment I'm finally writing off. Taylor is fired, I repeated, my voice steady against the tinny rage coming from the phone. Security is already on their way up. You vindictive little witch! My mother screamed in the background. You planned this. You knew she needed this job. How could you do this to your own sister? How could you throw me out on the street? I asked. How could you tell me it was futile to keep me? You didn't care where I slept last night. You didn't care if I had food. You only cared that your precious Taylor had a corner office. That's different, my father bellowed. We were teaching you a lesson. We were trying to motivate you. Well, consider me motivated, I said. I'm motivated to stop being your ATM. What are you talking about? Taylor whimpered, wiping mascara from her cheeks. Tell them, Taylor, I said. Tell them about the fraud. Or should I tell them about the mortgage? What mortgage? My father demanded. The government pays that. We qualified for the subsidy. I laughed. It was a dark, humorless sound. There is no subsidy, Dad. You make too much money from your pension to qualify, but you spend too much on gambling and Taylor's designer bags to pay your bills, so I paid them. You? He scoffed. You don't have 2 nickels to rub together. I have $14 million in assets, I said. And for the last 4 years, I have paid $3,000 a month to keep a roof over your head. I paid the electric bill so you could watch TV. I paid the water bill so Taylor could take hour-long showers. I paid it all. Liar, my mother shrieked. Check your email, I said. I just forwarded you the cancellation notice. The autopay stopped this morning. The bank will be contacting you shortly about the arrears. Taylor looked at me, her eyes wide with horror. She wasn't horrified that they were going to lose the house. She was horrified that I had the power. You can't just stop, she stammered. We need that money. I owe you nothing, I said. You threw me out. You severed the tie. And when you cut off a family member, you cut off their wallet, too. The security guards arrived at the door. 2 large men in uniforms. They looked at me for instruction. Escort Miss Bennett out, I said. And make sure she doesn't take anything that belongs to the company. Which is everything. Taylor stood up, sobbing now. Savannah, please, I'm sorry. I'll take a lower position. I'll be an assistant. Just don't fire me. It's too late for apologies. I said. You wanted to be superior? You wanted to look down on me? Well, look up, Taylor. Look way up. Because you are never going to reach this level again. The guards took her by the arms. She screamed as they dragged her out of the boardroom, her heels scuffing the floor. She thought she would rule. You're dead to us, my father shouted through the phone. Don't ever come back. Don't worry, I said. I won't. And Dad? Good luck with the mortgage. I hear the market is tough right now. I hung up the phone. The silence returned to the boardroom. My executives were looking at me with a new level of respect. They had seen me handle crises before, supply chain failures, zoning disputes, budget cuts, but they had never seen me handle a threat like this. Meeting adjourned, I said quietly. They filed out, leaving me alone in the seat of power. I looked out the window at the city below. Somewhere down there, Taylor was being escorted to the curb. Exactly where she had left me. The circle was closed. I didn't feel happy. Happiness was too light a word. I felt heavy, solid, and immovable. I felt like the foundation of a building that had just survived an earthquake. I had lost my family. But I had reclaimed my life. And that was a trade I would make again in a heartbeat. 3 months passed. The world kept spinning, indifferent to the implosion of my family. I never saw Taylor again. I heard through mutual acquaintances that she had been blacklisted by every major HR firm in the city. The fraud charge on her record was a scarlet letter she couldn't wash off. She moved back in with our parents, dragging her humiliation into the house she had helped kick me out of. But that house didn't last long. Without my invisible subsidies, the financial reality hit them like a freight train. The foreclosure notice arrived exactly 32 days after I cut the payments. They lost the house. They lost the status they clung to so desperately. Now, they were living in a cramped rental on the edge of town. 3 bitter people in a small room, blaming the world for their misfortune. I stood on the balcony of my penthouse, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of violet and gold. The air was crisp and clean. For a long time, I had been afraid of this silence. I thought that without my family, without the noise and the drama and the constant need to prove myself, I would be empty. I thought I would be lonely. But as I looked out at the horizon, at the green roofs of the buildings I had designed, I realized something profound. The silence wasn't emptiness. It was peace. I had spent my life trying to be the foundation for people who only wanted to walk all over me. I had tried to build a home for them, but you cannot build a home on a foundation of resentment. It will always crumble. Now, I was building for myself. I took a sip of my tea, the warmth spreading through my chest. I didn't hate them. Hate takes too much energy. I just didn't need them. They were part of a draft I had discarded, a design flaw I had corrected. My life was my own masterpiece now. And for the first time, the view was perfect. If you've ever had to cut off your own safety net to finally save yourself, share this story. You are not alone.